Next on the order of business.
Moving on, we have 5 delegations regarding harm reduction, followed by a staff report on the same matter. Our first delegation is Brian Gross of the Supporting Wellness and Reducing Harm Committee regarding harm reduction services in Abbotsford.
Now, I have, just before we begin, I have something I want to say. This is going to be a controversial subject on both sides. We will act with decorum. We will be respectful to one another. And if you're not capable of listening respectfully, please vacate the premises. That being said, let's listen to one another and have what we're here to say. Thank you very much, sir. Carry on.
Thank you. Your Worship, Council, I'm not here today to try to tell you or anyone what is right or what is wrong, what is black or what is white. What I'm actually here to do, and I think and hope it will become clear why, is to express my gratitude to you for bringing this topic to your agenda today. It's not an easy item to deliberate. It's not black or white. In so many ways, it falls into that gray, messy area of life that we would all rather avoid if we could. I'm going to start with a story about what brought me here personally into this gray area that we are all exploring together today. From the age of 10 to 16, I went through roughly 2-year cycles of high functioning followed by deep depressions. When I would call suicide helplines and was asked what was wrong, I couldn't say. I only vaguely knew, and what I knew, I didn't want to acknowledge, not to myself, and certainly not to someone else. I found the leftover painkillers from my mother's dental surgeries and had fantasies about downing them all in one big gulp. But I had an overactive gag reflex, so I had to choke them down one at a time with a pause between each to recover. By the time I'd got down 4 of them, within half an hour, the intent to kill myself had been replaced by a warm dullness. When I was 16, a grade 12 student turned to me unexpectedly after a class and asked, "Brian, you're gay, aren't you?" He said this in a completely neutral way, causing me to suddenly hear myself saying, to my horror, "Yeah." He didn't miss a beat, next asking, "So why don't you have a boyfriend?" Again, I heard my answer, "Because I'm a freak." I was in one of my higher functioning periods. I'd just been elected school president, in fact. And now, after this little interchange, I finally had shared with another person the answer to the suicide helpline's question. That moment, a moment of clarity really, I realized that no matter how hard it might be to live as a homosexual, I was probably only going to have 2 options. To live as a gay person, or die, who knows how soon, in a battle against being one. That moment for me was very black or white. And there was honestly relief in being presented with such starkly contrasting choices. So I came out. With me as president, our school became known locally as By High. The principal called me into his office to let me know the trouble I was causing him and that he was going to meet with my parents about it. I'd already told my mother, who put me on a 9:30 curfew, told me she never wanted to talk about the topic again, and especially instructed me not to tell my father. Now I had to tell him. I didn't want the principal telling him for me. When that was said and done, my parents still couldn't understand why, if I was even gay, I had to tell anyone, let alone tell all the people I had told, causing all of this trouble for myself. So when death threats and bullying crank calls started showing up on their answering machine, I rushed home every day to erase them before my parents had the chance to blame me for them. Amid all of this, there was some support I could access. But honestly, not much was reaching out to me. Instead, I had to recruit people to help me. When I approached the school's psychology teacher with the idea, he agreed to allow me to do presentations on homophobia in his classes. Of course, the thought of facing my peers, many of whom were passing around petitions to impeach me from office because I was gay, was horrifying. But again, it was a black or white moment. Either this or I go crawl under a heavy rock somewhere. But the morning of the presentations, I was called into the principal's office again, where I was told the presentations weren't going to happen. The school was receiving bomb threats and receiving death threats against me. I tried to tell the principal that this was all the more reason to go forward with the presentations, but his mind was made up. I stopped going to school, got expelled, appeared on the front page of the local paper with the headline, "Gay Student Learns Lesson," and the much smaller subtitle, "Teaches Lesson 2." I moved out of the house where I thought my parents still blamed me for everything, but the truth was, they'd already been pushed out of the comfort of black or white. By a combination of unending love and increasingly blistering fear, they had been moved into the gray. I progressed from couch surfing to living in a car on the streets. So now, though I continued to try to engage the world, my hope turned to anger, my anger turned to rage. More and more, I ran from the world, ran from the pain that underpinned my rage, and ran from life. But when I looked up, I found it was pretty clear I was also running toward death. And when I turned to run from death, I'd look up again and see what had become of my life. I too had entered into the gray. Not only did I now consider myself a sexual deviant in the eyes of the world, but with my drug use I had also become a criminal. If there was no way back, I felt there was no way back to society for me. My chances of ever amounting to anything had been ruined. By whom? I didn't know. Was it me? Was it society? That too entered into the gray. The drug users and former drug users who are here today are here because, by putting this topic on your agenda, you have opened a space for them, for us, to do a presentation on a different kind of fear and discrimination, of people who use or have used drugs and for whom their manner of drug use may have become both a solution and a problem, a mixture of black and white, gray. Unlike how I lost so much faith and hope in the world and my place in it, in that principal's office so many years ago, not that I don't understand how hard, maybe even impossible it would have been for that principal to have done anything else, we are having our opportunity today. And I am humbled and honored to be speaking on behalf of 450 plus people who use and have used drugs, who have been meeting in Abbotsford on a weekly basis to organize, support each other, and work towards supporting the city and the city's organizations to arrive right here, right now, in this black or white moment, a moment of clarity. Either this or go hide again under a heavy rock. So thank you for opening your doors, for coming, for listening. Our lives don't rest solely in your hands today. Your role, like everyone else's, is neither black nor white. But that's not to say it doesn't matter. I stand here today representing the Supporting Wellness and Reducing Harm in Abbotsford Committee, which, in addition to the BC Yukon Association of Drug War Survivors, composed of people who use and have used drugs, includes Abbotsford Community Services, Women's Resource Society of the Fraser Valley, Positive Living Fraser Valley, and the 5 and 2 Ministries, all organizations that have been pushed by a mixture of love and fear into the gray. These organizations have become like my parents, who once they realized they'd entered into the gray, searched everywhere for me when I disappeared. They didn't care anymore what condition I was in. And though they knew they may not be able to make everything all right for me, they wanted to at least have the opportunity to let me know they loved me in whatever way they could, and whatever way I might be able to understand. To these organizations, This is the meaning of harm reduction. Harm reduction acknowledges that rubbing someone's nose in their weaknesses does not make them stronger. Harm reduction introduces change, positive change, into people's lives. Every time an injection drug user unwraps a clean rig, they have the opportunity to think about why. Why did someone search me out to bring me this clean rig? Why am I using this clean rig? Harm reduction allows people who may have lost sight of their value to catch a glimpse of it again. This is why these organizations continued to practice harm reduction after this bylaw was passed. This is why they are still doing it today. And this is why in the Memorandum of Understanding before you, they are committing to continue to do it tomorrow. And finally, this is why I am standing here today. This is literally why I can stand here today, rather than being under a heavy rock or somewhere much worse. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that impassioned delegation. I know it wasn't easy for you. Are there any questions for this delegate? Motion to receive then. Seconded by Councillor Lowen. All those in favor? Received. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.